Hi, and welcome back to week 6. This week we'll be covering the last of our broadleaf trees and shrubs. So these are the last families that we'll be covering this week. And we have the cashew, maple, buckthorn, staff tree, oleaster, ginseng, dogwood, silk tassel, heath, olive, honeysuckle, and sunflower families to cover. So quite a bit to cover. There's a large number of plants. So I would recommend if you go out to collect plants, skim through the lecture to look through briefly through the pictures. And if you find a plant while you're out collecting, you might find it helpful to return back to these lectures and see if your plant looks like one of the plants that you see here, and then work through the plant after that to see if your plant fits the key to make sure that it really is that plant. So some of the keying with the broadleaf plants can be tricky, and it can be helpful to look through these pictures and try to find something that looks like what you've got and then see if it fits rather than just start from scratch in the key. Or if you are having trouble in the key, again, the pictures can be helpful. So let's start out with the cashew family, and one of the plants in this family is sumac, or genus Rhus, and smooth sumac is Rhus glabra, and these are shrubs up to 15 feet tall. And poison oak is also in this family, but this smooth sumac does not cause a skin rash. It has a compound leaf with 9 to 21 leaflets. This in particular can be confusing in the key when you're dealing with a leaf versus leaflets. And again, the main way to tell the difference is if you look, you can't really see it in this picture, but at the base of the leaf right here, you would see a stipule, and that indicates that what you have above that is a leaf. And each of these little leaflets does not have a stipule. And again, a stipule just looks like a little leaf bud. And so when you're going through the key, this whole thing would be a leaf. So if you're looking at alternate versus opposite, you'd be looking at this whole thing and how the leaf across from that compares. The most noticeable characteristic of these plants is their fruits and flowers. And so the flowers are white. The fruits are really distinctive. So this year's fruits are this really dark red in this shape here. And last year's fruits are a little bit lighter, kind of this pinkish color. And if you see a fruit that looks like that, pretty likely that you got smooth sumac. It is found on the OIT campus and other places around town. But if you happen to be near OIT and want to see this plant and see what it looks like, it's right behind building 15 here on the map. And these can be up to 15 feet tall. The one I know that I've seen around on the campus is much shorter, so it's probably trimmed a little bit and definitely not 15 feet tall. But we'll have these real distinctive looking fruits and flowers. So as I mentioned, poison oak is in the cashew family, and poison oak and another plant called skunk bush look really similar. They are actually two different genera. So you've got the genus Rhus for the skunk bush and genus Toxicodendron for poison oak. So let's start out with the characteristics of skunk bush first. This is Rhus trilobata, and trilobata meaning there are three lobata lobes. So there's 3 lobes to this leaflet. And it's a loosely branched shrub up to 7 feet tall. Unlike poison oak, it does not cause a skin rash, and it does look a lot like poison oak though. The main difference in the poison oak versus the skunk bush is that if you look at the 3 leaves, this leaf here, on the end of the 3 leaves, the base of this leaf extends all the way down to the other leaves. So you can see all along this midrib of the leaf, there's a little bit of leaf on either side there. The poison oak, the leaflet here, the leaf does not extend all the way down to where the other leaves meet. You can see some of the bare petiole here. These leaves can become shiny as they age, just like poison oak. They can be green turning to red, just like poison oak. So they can look really similar in color and even can be similar in shininess. But the main difference is looking at that leaf on the end and seeing if the base of the leaf extends to where the leaves meet or not. Poison oak, it can be a shrub or a tree climbing vine. It does cause skin rash, so if you want to include this as one of your plants that you found and include it on your map, Please don't collect it. You can just take a picture and use that in your collection. And the leaves tend to be shinier than the skunk bush, but don't go on this alone because skunk bush can at times be fairly shiny and poison oak can at times be not very shiny. So better safe than sorry. If you're not sure and you see leaves of 3, let it be. But that is a pretty good distinguishing characteristic looking at that base there. A little bit more on just looking at the difference between the skunk bush and the poison oak. Here's an overall skunk bush shrub, and here's a look at the color of the leaves in the fall when they turn red. Again, they look pretty shiny, pretty red. Poison oak here, again, pretty shiny and red. Poison oak can be, as I mentioned, a vine and climb up trees, or it can be in the shape of a shrub. While we're on the topic of poison oak, I just want to briefly go over the difference between poison oak and poison ivy. A lot of people will use these terms interchangeably, but they are 2 different things. Poison oak is Toxicodendron diversilobum, and poison ivy is Toxicodendron radicans. So same genus, but 2 different species. The poison oak, the leaves have rounder lobes than poison ivy and are lobed on all sides. On poison ivy grows, as you can see on the map. So poison oak is here on just the west coast. Poison ivy is in the west half of the United States. The leaves generally have pointed tips, and the leaves generally have pointed lobes on one side only and are smooth or entire on the other side. So you can see the lobes here on this side and this side completely smooth. Both of these, however, do cause skin rash, so whether it's poison oak or poison ivy, you would want to stay away from it. Next, we'll move on to the maple family, which includes the maples, genus Acer, and maples have really distinctive looking fruits. If you see these, so you have the seed here, and then these wings here, and this shape of having kind of the seed at the bottom with a wing is called a samara, and the maples are double samaras, which means they have 2 wings coming off of the seed here. And this is a whole cluster of the samaras. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of maples out there. There are 16 maples native to the US. There are only 3 maples that are native to the Pacific Northwest, but you might find any maples that are non-native planted around town just due to their different pretty colors and other reasons why people might plant them. So maples can be trees or shrubs, but all of their leaves are simple, which means 1 leaf coming off the petiole, not leaflets. They're deciduous, which means maples lose their leaves in the fall. The leaves are opposite from each other off the stems, or growing opposite, and all of them are palmately lobed, which if you think of your hand, your palm of your hand having like the fingers coming off of it, it's kind of like the palm of the leaf. So palmately lobed would be sort of this hand-shaped lobed pattern around the leaf. The only one that's not, the only Acer that's not palmately lobed is the box elder, and this is Acer negundo, and you can see this compound leaf here. But all of them will have that double samara fruit. The sugar maple, Acer saccharum, right here, this leaf is the tree that we get maple syrup from, and it grows in the eastern United States. 3 maples that we do have native here in the Pacific Northwest, although like I mentioned, you might see other ones around, are the big leaf maple, vine maple, and Douglas maple. The big leaf maple has pretty large leaves. They're at least 5 inches in diameter. This is an example of a big leaf maple tree. The trees can get much bigger than this even though, so pretty big trees. The vine maple is a little bit smaller in its overall size, more shrub-like. The leaves have 5 to 9 lobes. So if you see more than the 5 lobes, and a little bit different shape than the big leaf maple, but so a little smaller leaf in general and more lobes generally than the big leaf maple. The Douglas maple can either have 3 lobes that are not dissected all the way to the base or 3 lobes that are dissected all the way to the base. And so they can look really different, and you might even think these are 3 different leaves. They're really just one leaf that's very divided, but these leaves of the Douglas maple can be really different looking, so keep that in mind if you get to a maple. Keep that in mind as you go through the key. Next, we'll move on to the buckthorn family, and these in the buckthorn family we have a lot of different ceanothus plants like deerbrush and buckbrush, and lots of other species. So we'll cover those next. First, we have buckbrush, which is Ceanothus cuneatus, and the buckbrush has small leaves, and the main things that you'll notice is typically these whitish stems that are has these little branches off the stems that are a few inches long, anywhere from probably 1 to 3 inches long, and they're very pointed and sharp on the ends. So if you find something that's poking at you and pretty prickly to go up and collect, could be the Ceanothus cuneatus, or the buckbrush. Has very small little white flowers. You can see this is a plant in flower right here. The flowers are really tiny, and small leaves that are 1/4 inch to 3 inches long. Next in this genus Ceanothus, we have deerbrush, which is Ceanothus integerrimus, and this is a good example of leaves in this genus. So the Ceanothus genus leaves tend to have 3 prominent veins coming from the base. So if you look at a leaf here, you can see the underside's a little easier to see, but you can see one main vein going up the middle, and then just if we're looking at just from the base, you can see one more vein coming up from the base and a 3rd vein coming up from the base. Has lots of other veins coming up off the sides, but 3 coming from the base. And it's typical of many species in this genus. The flowers of deerbrush can be this pretty purplish blue color, or they can be white. And this plant, appropriately named deerbrush, is one of the most valuable browse species for deer and other species looking for leaves to eat in the Pacific Northwest, and it provides more forage than any other browse species in this region. Next we have mahalamat, or Ceanothus prostratus. So prostratus just means it's growing low to the ground, or prostrate, and it forms dense carpet-like mats up to 10 feet across. So it does not grow really up off the ground. It just grows very flat on the ground. It was previously called squaw carpet, but the common name now, usually they'll call it prostrate ceanothus or mahalamat to avoid the negative connotation. And it can have generally these pretty kind of purplish, light bluish purplish flowers, although sometimes, as you can see in this picture, they'll look sort of lavender or almost even white, depending on the plant and the flowers. Next, in the also Ceanothus, we have Ceanothus thursiflorus, and these are shrubs that are low-lying and tend to live in harsh conditions, or they can be trees up to 20 feet tall. So you can have those 2 forms that it can grow as. The leaves typically have the 3 veins arising from the base of the leaf, like many of the Ceanothus shrubs, and the leaves may have white dot-like glands along the margin. You can see in this picture here the white dot-like glands. They don't always show up as prominently as that. You can see in this picture they're not showing up as much, but this picture you can just barely see them around the edges here. The young twigs are distinctly ribbed, as opposed to deerbrush, which has round twigs. So you can see a little bit harder to see here, but there's kind of ribs along the twig and not perfectly round and smooth like deerbrush. Next we have redstem ceanothus. This plant is also called by some people buckbrush, and that's one reason it's important to look at the scientific name if you're looking up a plant. But this plant is Ceanothus sanguineus, and it's a loosely branched shrub that can be 5 to 10 feet tall. So by loosely branched, you can see here there's just the branches coming off, not as dense and tightly packed as a lot of the other ceanothus plants. The leaves have serrate edges and the typical 3 main veins from the base. The leaves are 1 to 3.5 inches long. Flowers are small and whitish, and you can see the flowers here and see the leaves there. So again, redstem ceanothus. Next, still in the buckthorn family and the Ceanothus genus, is Ceanothus volutinus or snowbrush. And this is an evergreen shrub, so it will keep its leaves all year long. It doesn't lose its leaves in the fall. It can be anywhere from 2 to 10 feet tall. The leaves are 1.5 to 2.5 inches long. They are thick and leathery, and the edges are curled under. So you can see all these leaves here with a very curled under look to them. It's a poor forage, but a good cover for deer to hide under. So we're still in the buckthorn family, but moving on now to genus Rhamnus. We have the coffee berry here on the left, and this is Rhamnus californica. It has evergreen leaves, so it does not lose its leaves in the fall, that are 1 to 3 inches long. The margins are finely serrate to entire, often slightly revolute or curled under, and it has, when they are fully ripe, black fruits. When they're not ripe, they'll start out greenish and turn black as the summer progresses. On the right, we have the Cascara buckthorn or Rhamnus persiana. It's an erect tree or shrub. Its leaves are deciduous, so it will lose its leaves in the fall. They are 2 to 6 inches long with prominent veins. So you can see here in this picture the prominent veins going up there. The margins are entire, and its cured bark is a laxative, and it's one of the most important natural drugs produced in America. And again, its berries will turn from green to reddish to blackish as the summer progresses. So next in this, we're going to move on to the staff tree family, and here we have Oregon boxwood, which is Paxostema mercenites. It's a low evergreen shrub with 4-angled or square twigs. The leaves are opposite with serrate margins, and it resembles huckleberry except for the opposite leaves. Next, we move on to the oleaster family, and we have buffalo berry, genus Shepherdea, and on the left is silver buffalo berry. It's an erect shrub or small tree, 4 to 20 feet tall, spiny, and the leaves are opposite with silvery hairs on both sides. And on the right-hand side, we have russet buffalo berry. It's a sprawling or erect shrub up to 6 feet tall. It's not spiny, and its leaves are opposite, dark green above and pale green or silvery below with rusty dots. So that's a good, if you see these rusty dots on a leaf, good chance you have the russet buffalo berry. So you can kind of see, they're very small, but you can kind of see all these little rusty red dots or glands on the bottom of the leaf. And both of these have these kind of reddish colored berries. Next up, we'll move to the ginseng family, and we have Oplopanax, and this is Oplopanax horridus. Devil's club is semi-prostrate to erect shrub, heavily armed with irritating prickles. So obviously whoever named this was not a fan of this plant. You can see all the little prickles along the stem and all over the leaves there. The leaves are opposite and palmately lobed with 5 to 9 lobes, serrate to doubly serrate, and as I mentioned, there's prickles on the leaves and the stem, kind of these red bunch of berries here. Next, we'll move on to the dogwood family, and the dogwoods are the genus Cornus. On the left, we have the Pacific dogwood, and it grows up to a tree up to 60 feet tall. The leaves are opposite and deciduous. The flowers are what appear to be one flower, but is actually a cluster of many smaller flowers. So sort of like the sunflowers have lots of little flowers in the center, you have lots of little flowers here, and then these what look like the petals of one flower are actually each a petal of outer petal of a flower on the outer edge of this bunch of flowers. On the right-hand side is the red osier dogwood, and it's a loose, largely branched shrub up to 15 feet tall. The leaves are opposite and deciduous, and the flowers are a small white cluster, but they do not appear to be one flower. So you can see here a cluster of lots of little flowers here. And the twigs are red to purplish red. So next, we move on to the silk tassel family, and we have genus Garrya, and we have two silk tassels here. We have a wavy leaf silk tassel and the Fremont silk tassel, and they're both erect shrubs and evergreen. This wavy leaf silk tassel is a little bit taller. It can get up to 30 feet tall, whereas the Fremont silk tassel will be about 10 feet tall. And the leaf margins on the wavy leaf silk tassel are wavy. So you can, if you look at the leaf here, you can see these kind of wavy leaves, edges to the leaves, whereas the Fremont silk tassel um, is not as wavy. So it can be a little bit, but not quite as much as the wavy leaf silk tassel. And the wavy leaf silk tassel has hairy below, so sort of little tiny fuzzy hairs giving this grayish appearance. And the Fremont silk tassel is not hairy below, so a little bit hard to tell in this picture, but this one would feel kind of fuzzy on the bottom, whereas this one would feel smooth on the bottom. And you can see the fruits here, and then these long, narrow flowers that look like silk tassel, so they give it the name silk tassel. Pacific madrone is in the heath family, genus Arbutus, and the madrone trees are pretty distinctive looking. If you see those, there's a lot of them. I know on the drive on towards like Medford, there's a lot of madrones. They are really tall, so 60 to 100 feet tall. They have this sloughing or peeling bark. You can see here the bark peels off and it's real kind of smooth underneath. It has this bark, these little bark pieces that peel off. The leaves are 3 to 5 inches long. They're leathery, dark, shiny green above, and pale silvery green below, and evergreen, so they will not be losing their leaves in the winter. So also in the heath family, we have manzanita, and these look similar to the madrones, but just a lot smaller. So they're shrub-like instead of tree-like, but they have that real pretty reddish colored peeling bark. Manzanita is Spanish for little apple because the fruits look like little apples. The apples should be on the shrubs at this time of year to help with identification. And both the fruits and the flowers are edible, so you can eat, especially as the fruits get redder. They get a little sweeter, a little tart when they're green, sort of like a unripe apple. And you can pull off when there are the flowers, which probably not this time of year, but you can pull off the flowers and eat those too. And they're real sweet flowers. Both the leaves the leaves are simple and alternate. The bark is usually, as I mentioned, smooth, dark reddish brown, and the fruits will start out green but age to a red, brown, or black color. So if you are looking at these in general and going through the key and you see fruits that are more greenish, it could just be that they haven't fully ripened yet. So it's hard to go by the color of the fruit unless you know that they're fully ripe. So let's look at some different manzanitas here. We have here on the left, hairy manzanita. It's evergreen, its fruits are young, and the twigs are hairy, but they will lose the hair as they age. They can be up to 12 feet tall, and the fruits will be red when they're fully mature. So here's your little apple fruits here, and your flowers on the right, which again, as I mentioned, if you see these little flowers, they are edible, so you pull those off and eat those. On the right-hand side, we have green manzanita. The leaves are light, bright green and glossy on both sides, so they're not hairy on either side. The fruit is dark red when it's fully mature, and they can be up to about 6 feet tall. On the left, we have a manzanita called bearberry, and it's a mat-forming shrub. Its leaves are dark green and smooth above and lighter beneath, and the fruit is red when it's mature. On the right-hand side, we have white leaf manzanita. It has whitish green leaves. The fruit is light red when it's mature, and it can be up to 9 feet tall. Next, moving on, still in the heath family, but to genus Vaccinium, there's huckleberry, which is Vaccinium ovatum, and there are over a dozen species in the Pacific Northwest. There's an evergreen huckleberry shown here. If you've ever eaten huckleberry, you might recognize the berries here. Next we have the honeysuckle family, and first up we have genus Lonicera. This is a black twinberry, and this is Lonicera involucrata, and you can see they call it twinberry because it's got these two berries that grow together. So anytime you see a berry, you'll see these two berries on this plant. And this one is not edible, so it's dark like the honeysuckle, but you would not want to eat this one. It'd have a really bitter taste if you did try to eat it. It's an erect shrub up 10 feet tall. The leaves are simple, opposite, and dark green. They're smooth above and lighter and a little bit hairy below. Also in the honeysuckle family, we have the red elder, or Sambucus rasmosa, and this is a shrub or small tree up to 20 feet tall. The leaves are compound, opposite, and have 5 to 7 leaflets per leaf. The fruits are usually red, and the fruit cluster is dome-shaped. It may be toxic to humans unless it's cooked, so it's popular for jelly for that reason. So next in the olive family, we have Oregon ash, which is Fraxinus latifolia. It's a large, about 40 to 80 foot tall tree. It's deciduous, so it will lose its leaves in the winter. These tend to be stream bank trees with opposite branching, which means the branches come off the tree opposite each other. And it has this narrow ridged bark, which you can see the little narrow ridges in the bark here. The fruit's a single samara, which means, again, there's like a little seed here with one wing coming off, as opposed to the maple, which if you looked at a cluster, there were the two wings and it was a double samara. So next we'll move on to the sunflower family, and we have genus Artemisia, and this is Artemisia tridentata, or big sagebrush. And it's a shrub that can be up to 15 feet tall for the big sagebrush. There are lots of other sagebrush species, though, that grow that are not this big, so it doesn't have to be 15 feet tall. But this particular sagebrush is a taller one. It's much branched with shredded bark. The leaves are persistent, alternate, and simple, and they are three-lobed at the ends and wedge shaped, so you can see these three lobes here. There's also another plant species, Persia tridentata, which is the antelope bitterbrush, that has these three-lobed shaped leaves. But sagebrush will be very strong scented. Recognize that sage smell when you, especially when you crush the leaf and smell it, whereas the Persia tridentata or the bitterbrush would not have that strong smell to it. And here's a close-up look at the flowers. All the flowers in the sunflower family are compound flowers, and so they are composite flowers, and they will have a whole bunch of little flowers making up each individual what looks like a flower. And so as you see these yellow flowers, some people call the plants in the sunflower family DYCs, or darn yellow composites, because they're a little bit tricky on keying them out in general. But as you can see here, these yellow flowers, the lobe-shaped leaves, three lobes should make and the strong smell should make the sages pretty easy to recognize. And as we talked about earlier, we have, from a distance, the rabbit brush looks a little bit similar to the sagebrush. Really, the leaves look very, very different. The rabbit brushes are genus Ericameria and Chrysothamnus. And green rabbit brush is an erect shrub up to 8 feet tall. The leaves are simple and persistent, nearly grass-like, so very linear, light green, and somewhat sticky. On the gray rabbit brush, the leaves are simple, persistent, and also very narrow, but more grayish green. And it's an erect shrub that can be up to 7 feet tall. I think most cases when you see this shrub, it's not going to be anywhere near that tall. Maybe will be 2, 3, possibly 4 feet tall in most cases when you see it. And that's the end of our week 6 lecture and our review of the plant species for this class. So after this, you'll be working on your plant projects, and please let me know if you have any questions while you are keying out your plants and going about your project.